Salutations, utopians. Hope all is well in your world, global here. Um, there's a major controversy right now in the Jaylen Brown saga, and I've been sitting with this pattern behavior for quite some time. And I've elected to stay away from it all because obviously there's some very sensitive people in the sports world, especially in the basketball region, of sports basketball, and you know, this has been a very active offseason. Giannis got moved, LaMelo got moved. Ja could be any day moved, even though at this point, knowing the Grizzlies' injury history, if he waits around long enough, they'll have no choice but to play him. And then now we got Jaylen Brown. The South, the mill just is adamant about making sure that he gets relocated, and he's not doing himself any favors if his intention was to stay in Boston. Even though I do think there's an element of him that does enjoy the idea of being moved. Trading barbs with Stephen A., trading barbs with now Bobby Marks. Just basically the back and forth with ESPN while promoting his podcast or his streaming site. But I've noticed a trend in sports now where journalists of high rank have takes, and then there seems to be an element of trying to hedge and walk back statements. No, not walk back, but hedge because they can't walk back their statements. Case in point, where it starts was like, and I know that this is not the most dead on example, but for instance, in the news, you'll see like Becky Hammond getting brought up for the Jalen Brunson take. You can't win with him as the A1A threat. He's not a guy, according to the interview that I mean, the take she made on the ESPN panel when she was doing advisory work on the side a couple summers ago. The same people that were saying last year Becky Hammond should get fired, while the Aces in the first half of the season were looking lottery bound, and then she turns around and wins the chip that same year. How they just managed to rally with Melissa Smith acquisition, Jewel Lloyd, and then the emergence of Kirsten Bell off the bench. And all of a sudden, people, I don't even know what people were thinking. Why would you be even thinking after a 53-year drought being destroyed, curse being ended? I am damn near, because it has been a damn near curse. The first thing you think of is, aha, Becky Hammond. And unfortunately, like it's crazy, especially like on Twitter, we've moved off of like memes and gifs, and now it's like narrative spinning. It's almost like tabloid journalism, misrepresenting uh, facts and things of that nature. Like, first of all, the league was a completely different league when she mentioned it. There was just some real juggernauts. The Knicks were looking real light in the pockets, and you know, biggest X factor was Mitchell Robinson finally got healthy. And Mitchell Robinson, as I've said before, I view him in the same category to me as like Ben Wallace, Dennis Rodman, Draymond, Bill Russell. I have him up there with those type of elite defensive players. Even if the Knicks let him go, even though I'm at peace with the idea that he leaves the Knicks, I hope he goes somewhere he can be all that he can be and catch up on all the statistics to match what the eye test says. Even though he's aging fast because he's put on some grown man weight. It might be hard for him to have the longevity. He's got seems to have an issue with playing extensive minutes. I'm at peace with him, being getting a bag somewhere. Perfectly fine, rightfully deserved. He's playing on a crazy bargain deal up until that was the real X factor. And then guys like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges perform to their capabilities. When you have a guy who's capable of going out having 40, 50 point outbursts, there's a lot of easy looks that should be available. And, guys finally exploited them. At one point, I remember in the Cleveland series, Mikal Bridges on the series had shot like 21 of 30, and it was like through game 3 or 4. So it's like the supporting cast was just capitalizing on what was given. And then, Carl Towns started to grow into himself, who another guy, a lot of people historically uh, said that he wasn't a guy, and then, he didn't have what it took, and then he morphed into this guy all of a sudden this season. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson allowing him to just focus on being an offensive player found his way. But Becky Hammond basically getting chastised and crucified. Jimmy Butler, oh, look, Andrew Wiggins and Cat went on to win a ring and he didn't. Like, just the most laziest, no context tweets that get the most, you know, clown views, clown viral moment, has no actual valid truth to it. And whatever. But and I'm getting sidetracked, man, because the real thing is the same people that were calling her to be fired now are the same people who are like, let's pull up this to try to, like, you know what I mean? It's this cruel intent. I see the same thing with Lamelo. Guys were, oh, he's not a winner. He's not a winner. He's not a winner. I'm in the comment section like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. This is not the guy to pick on. And lo and behold, as Charlotte now got healthy and started getting the Brandon Miller played more this year. Musa Diabate emerged. Brenner was looking amazing. Top 5, 10 in the league in field goal percentage and block shots. He's one of the best in the game. Oh, and just Miles Bridges had an all-star caliber year. Like, just a lot of great production overall. He toted the line of like solid role player and sometimes emerged like an all star in games as well. Cisse, who's going to be a major agent acquisition pickup for someone this summer. Underrated guy, Lou Dort, bootleg Lou Dort type player. They had so much talent on that team. I could go on and on. I mean, the acquisition of Kobe White was amazing. And so they finally, long story short, get to the play in. Look, all year, a lot of nights carried the league even. A boring random Wednesday night, they'll have everyone with Collins, the announcer. They really were onto something, and it's like they got their soul snatched from them when they traded Lamelo to Minnesota, who's pressing the panic button, losing an assistant. Anthony Edwards getting more banged up than ever. Uh, had to move off Randall for cap reasons. Just so many things that are, like, they hit the panic button and they just put out, which was a pretty reasonable trade, honestly. But when you unpack it, really a first in a couple seconds, 3 seconds, and then just some pick swaps. The Hornets was not a winning player, but somehow he's getting traded to a team that's been a perennial contender every season, have been a threat to be a champion every year in the West, mind you. Kind of crazy to me. And so then what ends up happening? They got to go, oh, well, you know, he, he, he technically, and I'm getting to the real reason why Jaylen Brown, this whole thing is going on, but technically, he started to get a little bit of value, so they sold high. He is way beyond just saying someone who you had to sell high. He was really, this to me is way more sad than Luka. But you got all these guys who actually have NBA votes, even, who are talking about it, or are in proximity of people who have NBA votes. Particular individual I'm thinking of, it even has a pod with someone who has NBA votes. They don't have one themselves, but they're on primetime TV and they're on a show with someone who actually has a vote on NBA awards and got proven to be, yeah, LaMelo's one of those guys. He's a franchise guy. And I don't quite even know why Charlotte did this, but this is a devastating loss for the city because, okay, even if Christian Anderson from Texas Tech has a solid season, Melo is a generational player. His vibe, his everything. And what he did for Concanuple, imagine what it's going to look like for Anthony Edwards if everything snaps into place and Edwards is fully healthy. Knowing that Anthony Edwards actually was just as good, if not better, of a shooter than Concanuple while being everything else out there. Uh, don't forget, Ant led the league in 3-point shooting. There's a science behind this. And I don't think there's going to be any power struggle because these young guys they don't do that stuff to each other because they understand the social media era. Like maybe some vets who don't realize that every know the ramifications of little every little move they make and how it could be perceived. But now we get to Jaylen Brown, and you have certain voters out there who have choices in the awards that are naming Brad Stevens Executive of the Year, and now the Celtics are they remember they won their championship being a third apron. They sold their franchise for 8 billion around that same time. Now they want to back out of that, expensive roster, having two $300 million players, and now you got members of the media saying, "Oh well, he's the seventh best guy on the team." It's like trying to sell it to the fan base, trying to, but at the same time, you're trying to sell your fan base to get rid of Jaylen Brown, and then at the same, it's like the Giannis thing. They're trying to warm you up to the idea of like he's going to be gone. And I think Jalen is helping them because at the end of the day, it's a business, and if one team is in the dumps, then everybody is. It's everyone's problem. It's a we problem. So this campaign is getting ugly and it's rearing its ugly head. But I just noticed there's this constant need to like when you have a bad take, and it's like I don't know if this is for the shock value and the trolling. Anyway, their jobs is secure. It's not like they're getting paid based on the accuracy of their takes. It's about whatever you got to say within the rules of the unwritten rules, because certain obviously people and things and lines you don't cross, but only they know what that is. But literally, we just need clicks. We don't care how we get them. Is the motto clearly over there? And Jaylen Brown, they're like, okay, he's the seventh best player on the Celtics. Possible. Really could have made him the MVP last year, and nobody would have batted an eye. Everyone, including myself, thought that the Celtics were going to just tank with no Tatum, and they proven to be one of the more dangerous teams. Now, you can't tell me there's some people speculating Stevens is upset. They wanted to be bad this year and get AJ DeBonsta and who's a Boston native and begin their next rebuild and move off that contract. There's only so many franchises that can actually take the contract anyway without having to absorb any bad, without having to return, you know, uh, and reciprocate that type of contract. So, if I'm not mistaken, Detroit was one of them, but they got Isaiah Joe, so they basically let it be known, not us. Which I don't think a player of that caliber should be even in the West, but even in the not be allowed to be in the East. They got to move him over in the West. I don't know what team on the West can afford to reciprocate the picks and etc. and all that, but and have the prospects. Some have suggested the Wizards. I don't know what the cap situation is like. I think they would mean that we'd have to give up like a do something involving Anthony Davis, and then they got the prospects, but maybe Bilal Calabi or something. I don't know. But they do got young prospects to kind of make it all work out if need be, especially the amount of wings and hybrids they got. But you know, it's like a favor has been called in. Hey, we can't afford this roster. The media members who were voting him as the executive of the year are the ones now going on TV telling everyone, Jalen Brown's seventh best, preposterous things being said. And Stephen A. and who also has a vote and all this nonsense. And it's like, this is, I mean, I guess it gets the people talking in an off season, but it's not accurate conversation being had. Jalen Brown is, an elite player. And this season, I think what he did here, I can't say it's more than what he did as a finals MVP. Like getting the Celtics to where they were and then Tatum returned. And I don't even know if Tatum should have returned, to be honest with you. I think they should have really just in hindsight now, just let Jalen Brown rock out to the finish and like, we'll go into training camp. Remember the year before that, he basically fouled out and said, enough is enough, no mas. And then not saying he quit on the team, just simply, he fouled out and that was the end of their season. And I think one more season without Tatum where they get bounced out. It's like, okay, because that's what it really is. You can win regular season games. Once you get to the playoff, friends like the Grizzlies, you can win during the regular. You can build, but you're going to eventually that young nucleus. They need to know what a deep postseason run looks like, and that's when you need a Ja Morant. That's when you need a LeBron. You gotta have guys who can just go out and get theirs. You know, to me, I don't know what teams are left on the market that have the prerequisite in order to feel like it would be even just compensation at this juncture. You know, he's too advanced for a young team, and he's you know expensive for a vet team. So uh, I guess the seventh best player on the team is preparing the league for a small package return that might not even be equal. But hey, it gets us out of the deal. You know, and I'm not sure what that looks like because the Celtics are similar to like the Lakers, where it's like you can't just put anybody on that team. You already have to be kind of established or something. That's why you see a lot of international players get the priority because at least their incentive or their angle on why they're worthy of being able to put on the purple and gold or the green for the Celtics is that hey, I got a whole country untapped market you can delve into. So, right now it looks like the Wizards might even be the best team on the market, which was already suggested. Um, you can't rule it out, um, but only the future can tell. I just noticed that this is an ongoing thing that keeps on happening uh, surrounding, uh, you know, media to a lesser degree. Even it happened with Carl Towns, where people were like, "Oh, he's not that guy. He's not that guy." Now everyone's like, "Oh, Jalen Brunson is the greatest because I hedge your bet." When Carl Towns stood up, he stood up. It's okay. Dirk had a notion on him. Now look, he's a pioneer and a champion and all these other things, but there was this perception of Dirk before he broke through and got that one of the bloodiest championships he ever did that any player has ever gotten, versus the Heatles. But it's okay, but it's just a little sad that it can be misleading for the sake of people trying to be right. Like nobody's going to be 100%. That doesn't mean we gotta have, weird basketball, poor basketball takes, doubling down on poor basketball takes, or propaganda machines that slandering people into the mud for things that are not applicable. You know, Jalen Brown is a really just he's a thinker. He's smart. He articulates himself. He means well. He's no nonsense. Um, and yet somehow he's on the outside looking in like Ja, who has on the other side of the spectrum was moving like a quote unquote high end. That's just unfortunate. It doesn't matter because it's unpleasant. Either way, the common ground is unpleasant. So, but none of this is really Jalen Brown's fault, man. He got that deal, and now the bottom line is Celtics need to save money, and it's unfortunate all this has to be this way. Utopians, hope this video was informative. I'll try to do better next time.